Hello again. Before we go on, there's just time to mention that our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Bouillon and Harry Breuer. It's performed by Jean-Jacques Perret, who's kindly given his permission for us to use it. And now, here's Elizabeth with some sport.
This is table tennis. A talented teenager showed off her sporting skills to schoolchildren on Monday. Denise Payet is a 14-year-old table tennis star. She's ranked number 1 in the under-15 division in England and number 3 in the under-18 category. She's also ranked 88th in the world in the under-14 division for girls. The Enfield County School student wowed pupils of her former primary school, George Spicer in Southbury Road, Enfield, with a display of her lightning-quick reflexes and pinpoint accuracy this week before a question and answer session with some of her pint-sized fans. Her coaches at Ellenborough Table Tennis Club in Craddock Road, Enfield, see big things in their protégé's future, with the Table Tennis England Masters competition looming at the end of February and maybe even Olympic glory after that. Denise said, "I started playing at the Ellenborough Club when I was 7 years old. I hope one day to represent Great Britain at the Olympics. At the moment, I travel around the country playing in competitions and representing England overseas."
Now, football. Ashley Blackburn scored a hat-trick as Enfield, 1893, claimed a thrilling 3-2 victory at home to Ilford in the Essex Senior League on Saturday. The artificial playing surface at the Harlow Arena, which they share with Harlow FC, ensured that there was never any doubt that the match would go ahead, despite the heavy rain which washed out the majority of fixtures in the division. And it was the E's who made the brighter start, as they were awarded a penalty in 9 minutes, which was confidently dispatched by Blackburn. However, Ilford hit back and grabbed an equaliser midway through the first half, with the scores remaining level until the interval. The match appeared to be heading the way of the visitors when they went ahead just before the hour mark, but the E's had other ideas and Blackburn got them back on level terms in the 67th minute. Both sides pressed for a winner, but it looked as if they'd have to settle for a draw for their efforts until, deep in stoppage time, Blackburn struck again to complete his hat-trick and snatch a dramatic win for the hosts. The win saw Enfield, 1893, climb 2 places up to 18th in the table and lifted them 4 points off the bottom. Enfield, 1893, go to Hullbridge Sports on Saturday at 3 p.m. Meanwhile, Cockfosters were once again frustrated by the weather over the weekend as their scheduled Spartan Premier Division clash at home to Wembley fell victim to a waterlogged pitch. Cockfosters, who are yet to play since the turn of the year, go to Bedford on Saturday at 3 p.m, while their clash against Wembley has been rearranged for Tuesday night at 7:45 p.m.
And now a couple of stories from the world of rugby about Saracens. Firstly, about new signings. Alex Lazowski is relishing the prospect of playing for Saracens next season after the Aviva Premiership champions confirmed yesterday that the fly half would be joining them from Wasps on a multi-year deal, with Charlie Hodgson retiring at the end of the season to take up a role as the club's head of recruitment and talent identification. Sarries were looking for another fly half to provide cover for Owen Farrell, and they have achieved their goal by securing the services of 22-year-old Lazowski, who has made 21 appearances during his 3 years with Wasps. Lazowski was one of 2 new signings announced by Saracens this week, with 24-year-old Fijian back Savanaka Rawaka also set to join the club in the summer. Primarily a winger, Rawaka can also play at centre, and he has made a huge impact in the World Rugby Sevens circuit this year. And now about their match. Rhys Gill became the first Saracens player to be sent off in more than 4 years as their perfect record in all competitions this season came to an end with a 29-23 defeat at Harlequins in the Aviva Premiership on Saturday. No player had seen red for Sarries since Justin Melk was dismissed at Leicester in December 2011, but that changed over the weekend as Gill was dismissed on 65 minutes for a tip tackle. The sending-off proved to be a pivotal moment as Saracens, who were leading 23-18 when they went a man down, conceded 11 unanswered points during the remainder of the contest to crash to a rare loss.
In other rugby news, Enfield Ignatians made a frustrating start to the new year as they let slip a golden opportunity to claim victory before losing 10-3 at home to Welwyn in Rugby Union's London Division 2 North West on Saturday. The hosts dominated territory and possession in both halves, but were unable to turn this into points as they squandered numerous good scoring opportunities, with Jordan Wilson's 35th minute penalty being all they had to show for their efforts. Instead, it was far more clinical Welwyn's side who claimed the only try of the game, through Robert Picken, with Phil Grehan adding the conversion and also kicking a penalty to seal their victory. Our organisation, defence and commitment were very good, said Captain Keir Bonner. We did everything right, but score. And now it's back to Elizabeth with some news.
Neighbours fear a phone mast built near their homes will become a giant health hazard. The proposed 17.5 metre pole would be installed by the riverbed next to Bush Hill Park, a popular place for dog walkers, joggers and children. Vassos Vasiliou of Grange Park Avenue, Winchmore Hill, said, I bought my house because it has a beautiful riverbank with picturesque views of ducks and swans. I will have a full view of this eyesore and it will completely spoil the view. I'm also worried about the health dangers. Mr. Vasiliou also claimed property prices would be affected. He added, I've been told that if plans go ahead, my house value could drop by up to 10%. Although protests have begun, Mr. Vasiliou claimed many people were unaware of the plans as the letters were sent out during the festive period. He said, we received the letters just before Christmas, right at the busiest time of year when everyone was out shopping and focused on celebrating. There's nothing we can do at the moment except raise awareness. Marcos Trikas, also of Grange Park Avenue, said, my son attends Green Dragon Nursery along with many other young children, and we are concerned it's going to be right next to the proposed location of the mast. There are plenty of other places they could install this mast, such as the golf club nearby, so we just can't understand why they've chosen this spot. A spokesman for Telefonica said, we have identified that we need to improve coverage in Enfield and have proposed a new base station at the New River, Ridge Avenue, Bush Hill. Since starting the consultation process with local residents, we've been made aware of an alternative site locally. We're now investigating the suitability of this site.
Enfield Teenagers are setting the standard in health, according to a nationwide survey on habits and well-being. The survey, carried out by Public Health England, found that just 3.5% of the borough's 15-year-olds are regular or occasional smokers. Only Redbridge has a lower rate. The survey also found that nearly 60% are eating 5 or more portions of fruit and vegetables every day, and less than 2% regularly drink alcohol. The results were drawn from a survey of 300,000 15-year-old boys and girls across England who were asked questions ranging from physical health to drug taking, smoking and bullying to paint a picture of teenage health in the country. The Enfield arm of NHS watchdog Health Watch compared how teenagers in the borough responded to the What About Youth survey with their peers living in other parts of the country. Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Education, Children's Services and Protection, Aoife Orhan, said, it's great to see that young people in Enfield are leading the way in living responsibly and behaving as good role models for the rest of London's teenagers. The council, its schools and other partners work really hard to create a safe environment in which young people can flourish and reach their potential. And it's brilliant news that at a time when young people are often unfairly maligned in the media, our youngsters are behaving sensibly and taking responsibility for their actions while living their lives to the full. We will continue to support our young people and work with parents, carers and schools to ensure they're able to make sensible and informed decisions about their lives and to understand the consequences of the decisions they take, so they can continue to grow into hard-working, responsible and valued members of society. These statistics should be a source of pride for everyone working with young people.
A man from Enfield spoke of his shock this week after an airline seat on a flight on which he was travelling was dismantled in front of passengers following a security scare. Furniture designer Paul Morgan was returning home after working in Ibiza when his plane was dramatically halted as it was preparing to depart for London City Airport because it was feared a passenger was flying with a stolen or fake passport. He said, "We were taxiing down the runway and were due to take off. They said there was a problem with the paperwork." Mr. Morgan of Willow Road said passengers were told that the authorities in London were concerned that a passenger was flying on a stolen passport. Mr. Morgan described how a woman was escorted off the British Airways flight on Friday and said that officials started to take her seat apart in front of us. He said, "Lord knows what they would have done if they had found anything. I don't think they should have taken it apart in front of us. It was a bit surreal. Everybody just wanted to get home." Passengers were later evacuated and taken back through airline security. Passengers got back on the aircraft and it started taxiing, but they were told the Spanish police were bringing sniffer dogs on board. "They were going over everything," said Mr. Morgan. He said passengers had to disembark again and their bags were put through the baggage scanners for another check. He regularly travels abroad for his business, Rick Baker Limited. He said, "They kept saying we were not allowed to take off because London was not happy with the paperwork. Once the plane was airborne, 3.5 hours late, the atmosphere was subdued," said Mr. Morgan. "It was only when we were actually in the air that it dawned on us what had happened," added the 51-year-old. A BA spokeswoman said, "The aircraft returned after authorities realised a customer was travelling with incorrect documents. The customer was offloaded and, in line with normal security procedures, all customers and their bags were rescreened as a precaution."
So basically, after they took that seat apart, he was found to be harmless. Anyway, the multi-million-pound Hatton Garden jewel heist must have involved considerable planning, research and preparation, a jury was told. During his summing up at the end of the 7-week trial at Woolwich Crown Court of 4 men who denied burglary and conspiracy charges, Judge Christopher Kinch told jurors the prosecution alleges that 4 others who have admitted their role in the £13 million Easter Bank holiday robbery would have only involved others they trusted. Mr. Kinch reminded the jury that they should consider the evidence from covert police recordings made in cars belonging to 2 admitted ringleaders, Terry Perkins, 67, of Heen Road, Enfield, and John Kenny Collins, 75, from Islington, North London, when conversations were had about the 4 defendants currently on trial. He said that their defence teams had said there were innocent explanations for any contacts they had with any of the men who have admitted involvement in the heist. Hugh Doyle, 48, of Riverside Gardens, Enfield, denied a charge of conspiracy to convert or transfer property and an alternative charge of concealing, converting or transferring jewellery or other stolen property. William Lincoln, 60, of Bethnal Green, East London, John Harbison, 42, from Benfleet, Essex, and Carl Wood, 58, from Elderbeck Close, Cheshunt, denied conspiracy to burgle and conspiracy to conceal, convert or transfer property. And the paper says the jury was due to retire this week, but I've just checked on the BBC website, and you might like to know that Carl Wood, William Lincoln and Hugh Doyle were all found guilty of their involvement in the heist, and they're going to face jail. John Harbison, Lincoln's nephew, was cleared of playing a part in the heist last Easter weekend, and he's been set free after 8 months in custody.
Hot off the press.
Indeed.
One of the most senior politicians in London has backed the Conservatives to cause an upset in this year's Greater London Assembly, the GLA, elections. Andrew Boff, leader of the GLA Conservative group, visited Haringey on Wednesday to give his support to Linda Kelly, who will be the Tory candidate for the Haringey and Enfield seat. Mr Boff, 57, stood for Parliament for Hornsey and Wood Green in the 1992 general election, but lost the marginal seat to Labour. He said he's backing Ms Kelly, a former Hackney Labour councillor, who defected in 2014 to have a better fortune in 2016. He said Haringey is a unique borough, probably one of the most diverse boroughs in the most diverse city on the planet. What I've always picked up on how frustrated people are with their political masters, rarely going along with what they want. I'm trying to persuade the people of Haringey that if you carry on voting for the same people, you're going to get the same outcome. They need to change the way they vote if they want to change the outcome. This is a great opportunity for Haringey people to say, I don't like the way it is and I want it to change. Since the first GLA election in 2000, the seat has been won by Labour, and Joanne McCartney has held it since 2004. Mr Boff said, I know I am a loyal Conservative because once in every 3 weeks I want to resign over something stupid they've done, and it's been that way for 40 years. The point about being in a party is that you constantly question it. The reason why Linda left the Labour Party is because they were not tolerating questioning and occasional dissent. The vote takes place in May. The other candidates standing for the major parties are Joanne McCartney, Labour, Ronald Stewart, Green Party, Nicholas de Costa, Liberal Democrat, and Neville Watson, UKIP.
David Bowie may have performed at some of the biggest rock stadiums, but few could have predicted what a pop legend he would become when he appeared in Palmer's Green 47 years ago. Bowie's death from cancer at the age of 69 stunned fans worldwide this week. But the artist, known for his musical innovation and experimentation, was little known when he took to the stage at the Intimate Theatre in Green Lanes as an actor in a mime improvisation on the 25th of March, 1968. He had released a solo album at that time, but his big breakthrough with Space Oddity was still 8 months away, and the single, Laughing Gnome, would not be a hit until 1973. Bowie wrote and performed 5 songs for the touring improv production titled Pierrot in Turquoise, which ran for 8 nights at the Intimate. He was one of a cast of 5. The production was devised by choreographer and performance artist Lindsay Kemp, who was to radically influence Bowie's approach to performing. Described by one critic as weird, the plot revolved around the freaky Pierrot, who accidentally tumbled into a mirror where he fell in love with the equally grotesque Columbine. But when Columbine bedded Harlequin, his jealousy drove him to murder. Bowie, as the character Cloud, watched over the proceedings from his perch on a ladder and narrated in song. It's not known what critics or the audience made of it, but it was the last time it was performed live. The Boroughs Association was one of music's most influential figures, was recognised this week by the leader of Enfield Council, Doug Taylor, who said, "We're proud and humbled that Enfield played host to David Bowie in 1968, before the world had even heard of Space Oddity, Ziggy Stardust, the Spiders from Mars, and the Thin White Duke. At the time, he was starting along a path that would result in him becoming one of the most influential musicians of his era and an iconic figure who influenced popular culture throughout his life. We're just pleased we were a small stepping stone on that path to greatness.
And here's an opinion from Matthew Smith. My experience on Mastermind was unforgettable, but one I had never meant to have in the first place. It started in the summer of 2014. My girlfriend Jasmine and I were watching BBC One quiz show Pointless, and she suggested that we should apply to take part, partly for the experience, mostly for the prize money. Unfortunately, applications were closed, but we did notice that applications for Mastermind were open. On a whim, I filled out the application and emailed it in. I then forgot about it. In March 2015, I got a sudden phone call from one of the assistant producers asking if I would consider an audition. They asked me 10 general knowledge questions over the phone and then invited me for a face-to-face interview the following week. Here, I was asked a bit about my background, my interests, and a further 25 general knowledge questions. I'd like people to bear that in mind. Despite my poor performance on the show, I had to answer 35 questions to get on the programme, so I must have at least got some of those right to be considered. As it was, I got asked to be on the programme, and so made the trip to the swanky new BBC headquarters in Manchester. The episode was filmed on a July afternoon, a far cry from that bleak January night last Friday when it was eventually broadcast. The preparations for going in were very surreal. I was sat in the green room, which was actually green, with the other 3 competitors. We swapped polite small talk with the undercurrent of knowing we were now opponents. On the set itself, it was quite bizarre to suddenly see the famous black chair right in front of me. When you sit in the chair, it is impossible to see anything other than John Humphreys as he shoots tough questions at you. I did well on my specialist subject, Middlesbrough FC, but flopped on the general knowledge, getting only 4 out of the 16 points to come third. I blame Beyoncé. If you've seen the programme, you'll know why. Still, I thoroughly enjoyed my time on Mastermind, and I think now I may be hooked on quiz shows.
A 28-year-old man who's battling a series of mental health problems fears being attacked on the streets after being evicted. David Hatt of Palmerston Road, Enfield, was told by Enfield Council it would no longer pay for his housing costs because he's not vulnerable enough. He's been told to leave by the end of January, but the 28-year-old, who depends on medication to treat bipolar disorder, ADHD, borderline schizophrenia and severe depression, claims he has nowhere to go. He said, "I know I'm just going to end up on the streets. I've lived on my own in the flat for 6 months, and it's my sanctuary. I'll deteriorate if it's taken away from me, as I've nowhere else to go. I'm dependent on medication to function, but it also acts as a tranquilizer to help me sleep. If I'm on the streets and it's a deep sleep, who knows what could happen? I could get beaten up or robbed. I don't feel like the council cares about that. I have no money, only benefits, so I cannot save for a deposit for a flat because that amount goes towards my daily living costs, such as food." Mr. Hatt was diagnosed with the illnesses in 2007, but says a council officer assessed his ability to work via the telephone. He added, "They made a judgment there and then based on my voice, but how were they even to know it was me on the phone?" Mr. Hatt, who grew up in care, is no longer in contact with his family and says he feels completely alone. He added, "On the streets, I cannot contact anyone and I'm going to be even more isolated than before." A council spokesman said Mr. Hatt approached the council for help after being asked to leave by his family. The council offered him emergency housing, while a thorough investigation of his circumstances was undertaken. It's accepted that Mr. Hatt has underlying medical conditions. However, the council does not believe that these meet the threshold that requires the council to provide housing. The council is currently considering this request.
A primary school teacher is on a one-woman mission to reduce class sizes and be able to look my pupils in the eye. Ishida Saradin, who has taught at West Grove Primary School in Enfield since 2004, has launched a petition to reduce class sizes to no more than 20 pupils per class in primary schools. With 10,000 signatures, the petition will get a response from Parliament, and with the 100,000 signatures, the issue will be debated in Parliament. She said, with class sizes increasing to up to 33 in some schools, it's time we had our say. This job has become harder, there's more paperwork than ever, and class sizes are getting bigger. If we reduce class sizes, it'll mean we can have contact with pupils. I want to be able to look my pupils in the eye and let them know that they are valued. And I'm sure I shouldn't make any comment on anything on this recording, but I actually agree with her.
Junior doctors at one of the borough's largest hospitals staged the first of a number of strikes, national planned strikes, after talks with the government broke down. Many of the 200 junior doctors at North Middlesex University Hospital in Enfield joined the picket line to protest over new proposed contracts, which they called a travesty. Sarataya Harley organised the Enfield strikes as junior doctors' union representative at the Stirling Way Hospital. She said she was worried that people would be put off training as doctors, stretching further the already under-pressure NHS. She said, "This is a public show of our strength of feeling. It is unprecedented that we have had to take this step, but the contracts offered will result in worse care and worse service. Doctors work 24/7 already. We're already overstretched. It will only take a small reduction in numbers of people training and qualifying as doctors to result in an overstretched service. We're all treated fairly by the hospital and by our patients. It's the government that has treated us unfairly." About 20 people gathered outside the hospital's main entrance when the strike began at 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning. But as the crowd grew, they moved outside the hospital's gates, brandishing placards and banners. The majority of cars driving past the picket line beeped their horns in support, with the doctors refusing to be put off by the biting cold weather. The 24-hour strike is the first of a number expected in the coming weeks. If no compromise is reached, junior doctors may call a 48-hour strike and then possibly a full walkout with no junior doctors on duty or providing emergency cover. Paediatrician Katie Knight said, "This strike is about keeping safe staffing levels. The government is trying to make us work many more hours with the same number of staff. The 7-day week proposals will run us ragged. This is a show of public strength, to show we are angry at the way the government has treated us. It seems as if this government has an agenda of wanting to privatise the NHS. The NHS will be decimated if we don't fight for it."
Well, we've reached the end of our programme for this week. Don't forget, your reader's representative is Diane de Jersey, and she can be reached on 020 8805 6578 if you need any help with the talking newspaper. And please remember to turn over the address label in your postal packet, put the cassette into the packet and return it to us as soon as possible so we can send out the next edition. We know you know how to do this. And the next edition will be with you in 1 week's time. Thanks for being with us. From me, Malcolm, Elizabeth, Katherin, Patricia and Jason. Goodbye.